So, Studio Madhouse coming in with No Guns Life. I mean, this is one of those shows that is so easy to tell, are you going to like it by just looking at the main character and the absurdity that you assume is going to follow, especially when I see a screenshot from apparently the manga explaining how would a character have a revolver on his head as his head. And the response is you don't need to explain shit because you have a gun on your head. This show is absolutely balls to the walls insane, and you're gonna have most likely one of two reactions when looking at this show at a surface level and actually watching its first episode. Either this shit's insane and I love it, or this shit's insane and I hate it. And you probably know what camp I fall into by me actually reviewing this because, oh yeah, this shit's fun. I just laugh thinking about it. It's so cool but also ridiculous and just batshit insane that I knew what I was going to get into with this episode before I even watched it, just based on the description, based on the character models, and seen by the pretty badass visuals based on the actual trailer. I thought this would have its insanity, it's like crazy action, some probably amazing animation seen by some of Madhouse's best animation back in the day, and this kind of feeling like it's a retro 90s, early 2000 action anime. And I mean, you got a main character with a revolver as his head, and he smokes a cigarette as much as he can. Like, this shit's gonna be early 2000s anime in the best possible sense. So you knew you were going to get that, but just the idea of having not only just like a revolver on your head, but there's a line in the episode about how he would only let someone he trusts pull the trigger on his head. It's like, what am I watching? I love it. This is one of those shows where it can actually go serious, it can actually go emotional if it wants, but it can also be this, and I love it. Like, I'm almost at a loss for words. I like this episode a lot. Like, I'm not here to say I love it, it's 10 out of 10, it's the best thing ever. But it's freaking unique, I have to say. It's absolutely unique, and I think the idea of this very industrial world is something that is fascinating. There's a reason I like shows like Psychopaths and things like that, where they really take the society and turn it on its head and do something that maybe in theory would be beneficial for people, but in execution can go completely haywire, and seen by this augmentation and applying things to humans and, you know, seemingly enhancing their life, enhancing their visions, but can also go insane and turn people into lab subjects rather than just hamsters being experimented on, which is bad enough. Now it can be humans. So it's like, that type of idea is fascinating for a narrative reason. It's really good world building mechanics, like you can pretty much tell anything you want, and at the very least have it come out decent. And I really think this is what we're gonna get here. Like, even when it goes completely absurd and silly, the idea to its world's interesting, and seen by one of the characters who literally ankle slit, wrist slit, basically a husk. Simply a test subject, and his only way of escaping this hell was to hijack mentally a body that he could use, one of these machines, and try to secure himself, but unfortunately help came too little too late, as only one character, a revolver head looking guy who Juzo is just amazing, and I love him just for his absurdity, but because he was the only one to try to help, it was something that unfortunately he couldn't help in time, and they kind of are separated. You obviously know, like, this is probably going to be the main plot of trying to rescue this kid, but like, you can tell the seriousness to this show, but you can also tell the absurdity, and a majority of this episode was absurdity, and not just like the almost like Fullmetal Alchemist embarrassed looking revolver head when he sees something attractive or a girl is giving him some romantic tension. Like, it's not that stuff that's just the absurd stuff. It's also just like the things he will say in a very serious tone, or just how his actions, his sleight of hand, it's like, why is this revolver smoking a cigarette, but it's kind of badass all at the same time? Like, you're mixing guns and cigarettes, things that aren't good, but kind of seem badass in anime form, and I kind of love it just for that reason. And I mentioned, like, this feels something that would be pulled from the early 2000s, if not the 90s, but obviously done with a modern visual flair. Now, there is animation to this show, but because you have a character who doesn't have mouth flaps, you get to avoid animating a lot more than you're typically used to with anime. So instead of like mouth flaps for your revolver or any of the other bodies that don't have moving mouth flaps, what you'll see is a lot of interesting direction choices in terms of how they frame a shot and just cut away, so you do get some good looking visuals, just not in the typical anime sense. Anime doesn't move all that much when you compare it to most animation out there. However, it's a style that people have come to enjoy, myself included, but you are kind of associating animation for anime as, at the very least, having the mouth move even at a static image. So with No Guns Life, because a lot of these characters don't have a mouth, or the mouth they have is just, kind of static, it does nothing. You will have a lot of shots of just a revolver looking at you, and I don't know, maybe it's just gonna be me, maybe no one's gonna like this about the show, but I like just looking at this character, and maybe it will grow stale eventually, but I don't know, it's just, I was kind of laughing, I was grinning, I was having fun even before this episode aired, because I was like, this seems cool, and this really does feel like Madhouse going back to what they used to do back in the day, and I kind of think this was a match made in heaven. Like, this is a show I probably would just want like 12 episodes of, and then call it a day. I might not need any more unless the story really gets crazy, but I think this is going to be a show that if you like the idea, a lot of people are gonna have a fun time. And I just love how serious the voice actor is for this revolver. It's like, this show is insanity. And I think I can probably speak for the people who have had either a curiosity about the show or had some form of enjoyment with episode 1. We don't really know what we just watched, but we gotta see more. And also, like I mentioned at the beginning, if you think the idea is stupid, you're probably gonna think the show's stupid. But I always love a world where it feels familiar to our own, but obviously set slightly in the future or in our current time frame, but just obviously technology advanced further than what we currently have. And you could easily see something like this happening in the future where, augmentations and things like that get more and more advanced to the point that you look at someone and you say, is that even human anymore? But also, what could happen to just, someone commits a petty crime and now they're labeled as a violent criminal in a system, so they get to be experimented upon so the mass public can get their new augmentation eyes, even though there's a tortured soul somewhere that no one knows about. Like, no matter how you look at this world, there's a lot of interesting, serious stories that you can tell. But at the same time, you don't just have to be a gritty, just depressing looking show. You can have a ridiculous, smoking, gunhead looking character who gets wrapped up into some ridiculous circumstances and says some cringy but hilarious lines, like how his connection can only be formed with a very select person, and that person will pull the trigger on his head. It's like, it's so cheesy, but you gotta love it all at the same time. I don't know, there's something about the visual flair to this show that really sells me. It's something about the colors and the way they bring to life this disgusting looking world. Like, this isn't something that you want to be a part of. There's something about Gotham City in like the comics of Batman. That's a city you don't want to be a part of. It's a bad place to live. Like, Gotham City is a character in the case of Batman, the same way Joker or Batman himself is a character within that series. It honestly feels like this world that our characters are living in is also feeling like a person as a character, as if, yeah, some of these things kind of look cool with the augmentations, but as we see more and more, it's like this isn't a place you want to be a part of, and you can understand how crime and just, maybe political sabotage or just underhanded things could go on and cause for a lot of misfortune, even if the general public think their way of life is fantastic. That's why this show's cool to me, even though I know I sound ridiculous being like, he has a gun for his head, this shit's wild. I know what I sound like, don't get me wrong. But even when I remove that just enthusiasm I don't know why I'm enthusiastic about, the world seems interesting. A big reason I liked the first season of Psycho-Pass so much was, before the first episode even wrapped up, I was like, this world's cool. I don't really have any strong connection to any of these characters yet, but the world's cool. I can see how even a basic amateur writer like myself could write something that you could probably get at least a interest in, but obviously given to the right hands can be masterclass. And I don't know where this story obviously wants to go, but the idea to the two central characters and probably this like trying to save this kid, and obviously even if you do, will be pursued by the system where even though you're currently licensed to wander the streets, should you help him, you will be labeled a criminal and be hunted yourself. Like, there's a lot of serious ways you can take this, but based on the non-serious and a little more ridiculous, it seems rather cool, I have to say. I like the visual flair, even though there technically isn't a lot of animation, it's more camera panning and things like that. I think the directing and just overall shot composition, the framing, it seems interesting enough, so even when I am just looking at static looking robots or guns, it does catch my interest at the very least, and it's in color, so it's not just like, oh, I should just go read the manga instead. It still has an anime life to it, so I do feel like I'm watching an anime, even if the gun isn't having mouth flaps attached to them. So it's like, I just feel like this is a show that's made for me, and not all these types of shows are made for me. Like, this typically isn't in my wheelhouse that I go out of my way to watch, but when I see Madhouse, when I see the description, when I see the character models, I'm like, I gotta at least enjoy this, right? And I did, and I definitely want to keep reviewing this. This is going to be an interesting one to review, really going to be depending on the direction they take it, how much serious there is, how much ridiculous, and I do hope there is a decent amount of serious just with the overall idea to its world. But I hope they keep the ridiculousness to it, because right now, No Guns Life has an identity that screams itself, and I think that's difficult, especially in an oversaturated market such as the anime medium, the manga medium, the light novel medium, basically all mediums at this point in time. When you try to make a story, not much is going to stand out. And at the very least, whether you loved it or hated, No Guns Life, it's standing out from the fall season for sure. But what did everyone think? Did you like it? Did you enjoy it? Did you love it? Did you hate it? Did you despise it? What did you feel about No Guns Life? Let me know down in the comment section below. If you did enjoy this video, be sure to drop a like and also hit that subscribe button if you have been new. So until next time, everyone, please take care and have a good one.